From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People always ask me what is the number one place for miracles in the world, and it's there are lots of options out there, and people can tune in to explore with the Miracle Hunter to catch some of the 80 or so episodes that we filmed already and they're airing on EWTN. But I always point to Lourdes. I always say it's something of a Catholic Disneyland. It's the ultimate place for miracles in the Catholic Church, whether it's the canonized visionary there who saw Saint Bernadette, who saw those 18 visions at age 14, or the 7,000 to 8,000 miraculous cures reported or investigated there, or the incorruptible body of a saint, or even just the experience of walking there amongst those people seeking healing for spiritual healing or physical or otherwise. It's truly an amazing place. And one of the things that makes it amazing is so many people go throughout the years to wash in the waters of Lourdes. And some people experience healings or changes in their experience. And they report this to the Lourdes Office of Medial Observations, the Lourdes Medical Bureau. And that's been headed for the last 17 years by Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis. And he's been the amazing doctor who's headed Lourdes from a medical point of view for all these years. I was so honored and blessed to get to meet him in person when we filmed that episode, Miracles of Lourdes. You can see that on EWTN On Demand, where we feature the 3 most recently approved cases and talk about the history and sort of the background and all the details of how those medical miracles are investigated and approved. Well, we're so excited today to be joined by Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis in one of the interviews today, because he is retiring now as the head of the Lourdes Medical Bureau. And so he'll be joining us to reflect on those 17 years and tell us what's ahead for at Lourdes and for him and otherwise. So we're so grateful for that. We'll also be joined by Father George Eliot. He's the vice postulator for a canonization cause of Venerable Antonio Margil. And this is someone who lived in Texas at some point. So we might consider them to be an American saint by some metric. And so we'll be so excited to talk to Father George Eliot later in today's program. Check out my series, They Might Be Saints, which airs every week on EWTN. On this week, Tuesday, May 5th, the episode on Blessed Solanus Casey will be airing. It's one of my favorites. Solanus Casey was known far and wide as the miracle-working Capuchin from Detroit, and his beatification was attended by 60,000 people at Ford Field in 2017. I'll be examining his simple yet remarkable life in this episode of They Might Be Saints. And check out my other series on EWTN, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Tre Fontane. That's May 2nd on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. I investigate a miraculous encounter at the site where St. Paul was martyred, and the Virgin of Revelation's appearance to Bruno Carnacchiola, a rabid anti-Catholic, changed both the man and the church itself. So check that one out, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Tre Fontane. That was on May 2nd on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Later in the show today, we're going to be looking at the Might Be Saint of the Day. For today, we've got Blessed Mario Borgiaga, who lived from 1932 to 1960 in Italy. And the 365 Days with Mary project looks at Our Lady of Good Counsel from Genazzano in Italy in the year 1467. And the question of the week is an interesting one. What phase would the moon have been in when Juan Diego saw Our Lady of Guadalupe on that specific day and time that he saw her? Great question. For the miracle of the day, we'll be looking at the apparition that's allegedly received by Maria Pavlovich at Medjugorje starting on April 25th, 1987. That was the first of the annual apparitions that she was said to receive there at Medjugorje. We'll talk about that one in just a little bit. In the miracle news for this week, and we're going to be talking about this later in the show, the miracle doctor of Lourdes has retired after 17 years, and he's always insisted that miracles aren't his job, says the headline. We'll be talking today with Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, the outgoing director of the Office of Medial Observations at the Lourdes Sanctuary in France, And he's an Italian-American physician, age 70, who has headed the medical office for the past 17 years and retired on the feast day. And for the past 17 years, he has been the head of the Office of Medial Observations of the Lourdes Sanctuary in France. And as he retired on the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes on February 11th, the entire congregation, bishops, burst into applause at a mass for the feast day. And he will be succeeded in April, or has been succeeded in April, by Italian surgeon Giada Monami, who currently practices in Venice. And he studied medicine and pediatrics in Naples before continuing his education in the United States at Harvard, where he earned a Master's of Science in Epidemiology in the School of Public Health in 1985. And in 2009, he became the first non-French permanent physician at the Lourdes Sanctuary and president of the Lourdes Medical Bureau, which investigates the cases of reported medical cures amongst pilgrims. And they've had a medical doctor there since 1883, so he is perhaps the 15th or 16th, I can't remember, in that long line of people who have been there. And this has been a big deal to have Father de Franciscis there in Lourdes. And I was so honored to be there myself to meet him in person when we did that Miracle of Lourdes program, which you can see if you tune into EWTN On Demand. Search for Miracles of Lourdes, and you can check that one out. You can see my interview with him where they talk about all the behind the scenes of what goes on at that Lourdes Medical Bureau, with 8,000 cases of healing recorded since 1858, and 72 now have been pushed forward as approved miracles, officially recognized by the local bishop. And that is the incredible run that he's had at 17 years there at Lourdes, France. And we'll be looking forward to talking to him later in the program. I've got another interesting miracle news item for you. A Kansas man is drawing national attention after surviving a catastrophic brain injury that doctors initially believed would be unsurvivable. And this case, attracted my attention, especially beyond what the medical community was saying, because it was submitted for review in connection with the canonization cause of Venerable Emil Capon, who we've talked about on this show before, a Catholic priest and Medal of Honor recipient whose intercession has been associated with other reported healings in Kansas. And the church investigators are examining whether the recovery meets the stringent Lambertini criteria for the recognition as a miracle, requires independent medical verification and no scientific explanation sufficiently accounting for this outcome. So this could take years, of course, as these things do. The case is already being considered to being pushed to Rome for the miracle that they would use to move Venerable. He was just declared Venerable, I believe, a year or so ago, to Venerable to Blessed Emil Capon. So that would be very exciting news following this brain injury with a rapid and, I believe, full recovery. For more information on this, I'm sure you can go to the Father Emil Capon website, and I'll be posting a link to this on my Facebook page of The Miracle Hunter. Let's check out Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week where we ask a trivia question and give a prize for an emailer that writes in with the correct answer. Strangely enough, last week's question, we were talking about healing miracles, so I asked a question about Lourdes, and it was how many officially approved Lourdes healing miracles have been from the United States? And the answer was an unsatisfying 0. There have been 0 cases from the United States, despite all the American pilgrims who have gone there. And perhaps there's only one English-speaking person, maybe that was the better trivia question, that was miracle number 71 or 72, I can't remember, the man named Trainer, who was healed, and that was an older case that they dug back up. We'll talk with Dr. de Franciscis about that one later in the show today. So that answer was 0. But this week's question, who was the first canonized American saint? We're going to be talking today about Venerable Antonio Margil from Texas, and he might be an American saint someday. But who was the first canonized American saint? If you think you know that answer and want to win the prize, the image of the faces of Mary, send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and answers and winners will be posted on the show page on miraclehunter.com. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Father George Eliot, the vice postulator for Venerable Antonio Margil. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People who tune into this show know that I love talking about Marian apparitions and medical healings, and the ultimate place for that, of course, is Lourdes in France, the site of those 1858 Marian apparitions received by 14-year-old Bernadette Subaru. And there's been so many reported miracles of people who have bathed in those waters of Lourdes, and the miracles get reported to the medical bureau there at Lourdes. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, who has been the head of the medical bureau at Lourdes for many years, 17 years, I believe. And he appeared on our program Miracles of Lourdes and has been on this radio show before. And now he is retiring after an incredible career at Lourdes. We welcome to the program, all the way from Lourdes, France, Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis. Welcome to the program, Doctor.
Well, thank you very much, Miracle Hunter. In fact, indeed, we met in the past, and this is the closing of my 17-year in a few weeks tenure as the residing doctor, a physician, at the Lourdes Office of Medial Observations and at the Lourdes International Medical Committee.
Wonderful. What a career it has been. What led to your decision to move on after these 17 years?
It is not necessarily my decision. It's also a matter of age. I have changed my age first digit from 6 to 7. And as I walked into my 70th, I was told it was time to leave. That's the way it works a little bit here in Europe. And in the meantime, we had started already some years ago looking for candidates to my succession when I had been elected as Grand Hospitaller, which is the Minister of Health and Human International Cooperation of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. I am a professed knight in the Order of Malta. I'm a lay religious. Back in 2022, I was appointed by Pope Francis to the charge and elected by our chapter general in 2023. So because of that, I couldn't have two important jobs. We were starting looking for successors, but then eventually a number of people answered. A bit more than 30 candidates presented themselves. And so little by little, with the bishop, who remains the head of the sanctuary and of the Diocese of Lourdes, we were oriented to the appointment of this lady, doctor, the first lady to be charged of such a big responsibility in the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes. She will turn 50 only next year. She has a degree in pharmacy. After that, she did her medical studies. She's now a medical doctor in internal medicine. She worked in northern Italy, in Verona first, then Venice after. And eventually she left now her job and joined us on April 15th. This is the week. It is Dr. Giada Monami, Monami, her family name. And we're very happy to have her. And little by little, we're going to try to show her the way I have conducted, at least until now, for 17 years and a little bit more, the office. So we are quite excited. It's a time of changement and of new things.
Amazing. And she's the next in a long line of doctors since 1883, I believe. There has been a
she
doctor. She
will be there for, I was the 15th, so she'll be the, I was the 16th. She was, and she'll be there for the 17th. Yeah, it's a long era of doctors, yes.
Wonderful. And we've been talking today with Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis from the Lourdes Medical Bureau, investigating those miracles. And tell us a little bit what it's like. People have sort of a foggy idea. They know that perhaps as many as 7,000 or 8,000 cures have been reported to you at Lourdes or over the years there at Lourdes, and a smaller number, something like 72, have been officially recognized. What has it been like for you being in this very unique role, unlike anything else in the entire world?
I must say, as I might have told you the first time we spoke, that I had been sort of very accustomed to Lourdes because I started coming here when I was a high school student as a volunteer helper on the pilgrimage from from my birthplace of Naples, Italy. So I've been coming year after year since. I then become a medical student, a young doctor, a junior doctor, then a junior faculty in the University of Naples. And as my life advances in different experiences in my professional career, I keep coming regularly to Lourdes, where I am invited, to my total surprise, by a letter of Bishop Perrier, at the time Bishop of Tarbes and Lourdes, on June 2009 and June 2008, which was the year of the 150th anniversary of the apparitions. And the letter that it was sent to me on paper, not an email, is a letter that has definitely changed my life, because I kept it was very serious. It was not a joke. I spoke to my spiritual director. I spoke to my closest family. I was at the time a celibate, which I still am, and I spoke to my mother and sisters, and I just understood, praying and discerning for a couple of months, that was what I was called to. And so I moved eventually to Lourdes and started my job on April 1st, which in the States is, of course, an April Fool that our Blessed Mother did on me, of 2009. And so on April 1st this year, it was 17 years, and probably I'm going to leave office in September this year. I will definitely leave the sanctuary in the city of Lourdes. So it's been quite a time, quite a big slice of my life, yes. So there was really it was not a vocation in the sense that I was thinking of the job, but it was actually a call that I received in the form of a paper. And since you and I, as Christians and Catholics, we talk so very often of vocations, which comes from Latin vocare, to call. I mean, I can't deny that I was vocated, I was called in quite an unmistakable way.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people who don't know, I was so honored and blessed to be able to see behind the scenes there, visit you and interview you in your offices there, and see how things are set up over there. What is it like? What had it been like for you on a day-to-day basis with the reporting of miraculous cures and understanding the history and tradition there? What was the day-to-day life like for you as the Doctor of Lourdes?
Well, just to give an idea to our listeners, since my first pilgrimage time, 2009, until the explosion of the COVID pandemic in 2020, in 11 seasons that I'd spent from 2009 to 2019, I have received never less than 110. That's the smallest number of reported alleged cures to me. Of course, it is the person that comes or writes to me that believes she or he has been cured. But then when you start dwelling into this history, the medical history, and reading, if you are given the medical documentation, you see that these numbers shrink. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, before COVID, I received a total, we said, about at least 1,300 alleged cured reports. Then there was a blackout all of 2020, all of 2021, and as of 2022 until last year, 2025, an increasing number, which brought last year, 2025, to receive 54 reported alleged cures. So I find interesting that the overall categories or diagnostic categories is cancer. It's all during these 17 years has always been above 30%. I mean, a third of the declared cures. Now, this is only a sample of the tens of thousands of reported events that have been given also to my predecessors. But then when you go into the application of the criteria, which are our criteria of judgment of cures, which I will say in a minute, then these numbers shrink terribly, because, of course, what is lived as a cure by a person is not necessarily an unexplained cure according to current medical knowledge. And so in my tenure, I have had quite a number of files that have instead advanced, and I had the honor of accompanying 5 cures to be recognized as medically unexplained according to current medical knowledge, and eventually recognized by the bishop of the cured person as being a miracle. So I joined Lourdes with a gallery of 67 miraculous cures, and I leave now office with a gallery of 72, as you said, quite rightfully, miraculous cures. The
Wonderful.
criteria that we
And
use.
would it be fair to say that the highlight of the cures that came down your path was the healing of Sister Bernadette Morio?
No, because from my point of view, each of them was the highlight of, no. Sister Bernadette was the cure of a French religious nun, which was cured of a coda equina syndrome in a very severe form, which was highly handicapping, extremely painful. And it happened 3 days after she got back home from a pilgrimage to Lourdes in 2008. But I would say equally remarkable is the cure of the English soldier John Trainer of the Diocese of Liverpool, England, the first English-speaking miraculous cure that had been completely studied and reported. He was cured in 1923 on the first pilgrimage of the Archdiocese of Liverpool, and he was studied and recognized as an absolutely unexplicable cure in 1926. The report and the minutes of the meeting with all the doctors and scientists that were present was printed and rendered public in 1926, December, but nobody at the time ever thought of sending this written report to the Archbishop of Liverpool. So this was a very interesting. This was truly, dear miracle hunter. It was really a miracle hunting, because with the help of Dr. Kieran Moriarty from England, sort of excavated everywhere we could, because we knew there was a fame of this miraculous cure, but we never found any written proof. And then eventually we found that it had been even published publicly on the official journal of the Sanctuary in 1926. The Archbishop of Liverpool, when received the communication from the Bishop of Lourdes, immediately recognized on December 8th, 2024, this cure as being miraculous. And we celebrated there with the bishop, my bishop, and all the team of the medical office on February 18th of last year, 2025, on the feast of Saint Bernadette in England. That also was quite spectacular. But equally is the last one, the Italian lady Antonia Racco, which was cured in a way which remains scientifically unexplained of primary lateral sclerosis, a very severe disease, a neurodegenerative severe disease, which is very close in a way to understand for your public to Lou Gehrig disease, but this one interests only the upper motor neuron or first motor neuron. That's why it's primary lateral sclerosis, very devastating disease, which disappears during her pilgrimage in Lourdes in 2009, which, by the way, was my first season in Lourdes, but I didn't know the lady. I will get to meet her only in 2010, when she comes back to Lourdes and she reports her alleged cure. This case also has taken about 15 years to arrive to final conclusion, with a passionate research in medical literature on the criteria of such a severe neurodegenerative disease. And eventually it was recognized by the Lourdes International Medical Committee as being an unexplained cure in 2024, and recognized as a miracle by her bishop in April 2025, 1 year ago. I truly believe that each of the 72 stories, or at least each of those that I've met the cured person, there is something which is worth telling. There is a miracle in every miracle, but this is my very humble opinion.
Very well put. We've been talking today with Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, the outgoing head of the Lourdes Medical Bureau, the Lourdes doctor, the doctor of Lourdes, as people might say. And you mentioned your successor, who will be taking over for you, and you'll be staying around till September, and then you'll be going on to other things. What is your number one piece of advice for your successor as she takes over?
Well, I told her already, and I will repeat because I believe that is true. It is about being welcoming. I think if there's something that characterizes Lourdes, is the fact that anyone who arrives in Lourdes is felt welcome, and anyone who comes to Lourdes must be welcome. Bernadette was terrorized when she saw this appearance of this woman, or this thing, as she said, arquero, in the grotto. But when she saw the apparition starting doing the sign of the cross and reciting the rosary, then she felt welcome. And when the first time she was addressed by the same apparition a few days later, which she said, I will not promise thou, in the former respect, thou, vous, I don't promise thou the happiness of this life, but the other, she understood that she was called to something greater and beautiful. I mean, anyone that arrives in Lourdes must be felt welcome. So the only suggestion I gave and will give when I leave with my suitcase in my hands to my successor is welcome anybody that walks through the door of the medical office.
Beautiful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, the head of the Office of Medical Observations at the Lourdes Sanctuary in France. We're so grateful to you for your time today, giving us your reflections on your experience, and we're so grateful for all the work that you've done over the years, bringing these miracles to light and sharing them with the world. And I have a special personal thank you for welcoming me into your offices and to spend time with you. Congratulations on your retirement, and best wishes on the road ahead.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And let's keep in touch, by the way.
Wonderful.
If there's anything that we can still do together, I'll be delighted to do so.
Wonderful. I'm sure our paths will cross again. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, for joining us on today's program.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye now.
God bless. That was Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis joining us all the way from Lourdes, France, talking to us about his career, wrapping up those 17 years. At the age of 70, he's moving on, and a new head of the Office of Medical Observations at the Lourdes Sanctuary will be taking over, and we're so grateful to for his good work throughout the years. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill and the Miracle Hunter. Hey, I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I get some pretty funny things in my email inbox when I try to answer them when I can, but I also answer them on the radio show here. But even more than answering through email or on the radio, I enjoy speaking at different places. I go to 15 or 20 places around the country each year and give different talks to shrines or parishes or different other events where I talk about miracles. And I'm always talking about things like Eucharistic miracles or Marian apparitions or sainthood causes or how the Catholic Church investigates the supernatural. I'm always looking at these things and talking about them. And I always like opening it up to questions at the end, and people hang around at the end, and it usually goes 15, 20 or more minutes talking about the things that people have on their minds related to the world of miracles. And I always love that part. That's my favorite part, the question and answer at the end. And so for today, we've got an email question, and it's a really good one. It says, Dear Miracle Hunter, what phase would the moon have been in when Juan Diego saw Our Lady of Guadalupe on that specific day and time when he saw her? It appears she is in front of the moon, and her light is so bright that you cannot see the moon where the light hits it, but it creates the dark crescent shadow. A white crest is called the wax crescent phase of the moon, but what about when more than half the moon is illuminated with light and creates the dark crescent? Thank you, Anonymous. That's a really good question, and I'll do my best to try to answer this one. What's interesting, of course, the date of the vision of Our Lady of Guadalupe falls on December 12, 1531, but we have to take the Gregorian calendar shift into account when some days needed to be added to the calendar. And so traditionally we have that date of December 12, 1531 with the Julian calendar. And when in the Gregorian calendar, the date comes to December 12 or 22nd, 1531. So it's a slightly different date. So when we talk about dawn and early morning near Tepeyac, modern Mexico City, on that corrected date, the moon would have been approximately a waxing crescent about 3.5 days past the new moon, with roughly 15 to 20% illumination. Another aspect to think about, a moon that young would normally be an evening moon, so by dawn it would likely already have set, so the lunar phase would still be waxing crescent, but it probably would have been visible in the morning sky at the time traditionally ascribed to the apparition. And so that's the best I can answer that question. But it is an interesting one because we do see the moon depicted in the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and is it directly correlating to what the actual moon was? That's a terrific question from Anonymous. Thank you so much. If you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. For today, we've got Our Lady of Good Counsel from Genazzano in Italy in the year 1467. And so the story goes that on April 25th, 1467, on the Feast of St. Mark, at about 4 p.m. in Genazzano, a most pleasant melody began to resound from heaven, and the townspeople started to look for the source of the music when, above the roofs and towers of the church, a small illuminated white cloud descended to the church of the Mother of Good Counsel. Within seconds, the chapel was full of people, astonished, came to admire the heavenly phenomenon. The little cloud dissipated, revealing a beautiful painting of Our Lady and her divine Son, and the image was crowned as Our Lady of Good Counsel in 1682 in the Vatican Basilica. And Pope Leo XIII gave special meaning by adding it to the Litany of the Virgin Mary, and her feast day is April 26th, and that is Our Lady of Good Counsel from Genazzano in Italy in the year 1467. For more information on this fascinating devotion, or any of the hundreds of other Marian devotions from around the world, you can connect to the website 365dayswithmary.com. You can pick up the book or download the app 365 Days with Mary, Marian Calendar, available for free from the iOS App Store. Let's take a look at the miracle of the day. We do this every week where we talk about miracles happening around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And we talk about, for each and every day of the calendar year, there's been some miracle somewhere at some point in Christian history. And so for today's date, we've got something related to Our Lady of Medjugorje, the alleged Marian apparitions from Bosnia-Herzegovina starting in 1981. And that just recently, within the past 2 years now, has received the recognition from Rome to be allowed for faith expression at that site. And saying that there is no problems with those apparitions was the judgment of Rome. They've never declared it supernatural, but they said that nihil obstat, nothing stands in the way. And so for today's day, we've got April 25th in 1987, and Medjugorje Maria Pavlovich is one of the visionaries who reported receiving a monthly message each year from the Virgin Mary on the 25th of each month, including April 25th each year. And again, this is not approved as supernatural by the Vatican, but has been permitted for pastoral activity. And in these April 25th messages emphasize prayer, conversion, and peace. And the first one being there on April 25th in 1987 by Maria Pavlovich. And that is today's Miracle of the Day. Let's take a look at the sainthood news. We do this every week where we talk about those people coming down the pipeline. And we always like to talk about they might be saints, which is my project where I look at people on the path to sainthood. And of course, there are 4 steps in the canonization process. We talk about servant of God, venerable, blessed, and saint. And miracles come into play with blessed and saint, of course. And so I always like to let you know about different events, beatifications, and canonizations that come up. And one is the beatification of Venerable Servant of God, Francis Xavier Truong Bu Diep. And he is from Vietnam. And his beatification has been announced for July 2nd, 2026. And he was a diocesan priest and arrested on March 12th, 1946, by a group of militiamen of the Caroista sect because of his authority amongst the inhabitants of the village, where he was the parish priest. But he was found dead a few days later, and that is after his arrest on March 12th. And so that is the new beatification that will be coming up on July 2nd in celebration of a new blessed in our Catholic Church, Blessed Francis Xavier Trong Bu Diep. And he's today's Sainthood News item. And let's take a look at the Might Be Saint of the Day. We always try to find somebody whose death anniversary or feast day, it lines up exactly to the day's date. So for today, on April 25th, we've got Blessed Mario Borsaga, who lived from 1932 to 1960 in Italy. He was born on August 17th, 1932 in Trent, in Italy. He joined the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate at the age of 20 and was ordained at 25. And he went as a missionary to Laos in 1957, where he cared for the sick, ministered to people suffering from persecutions of the communist guerrilla group Pathet Lao, and he wrote a diary of his experiences, which was later published as To Be a Happy Man, and he died as a martyr. When he was murdered on April 25, 1960, in Kewikatiam Luang Prabang in Laos by the troops there of the Pathet Lao, and Pope Francis, in a decree of martyrdom on May 5th, 2015, beatified him or declared him venerable. And then on December 10th, 2016, he was beatified by Pope Francis in Laos, celebrated at Laos on December 11th, 2016. And he is today's Might Be Saint of the Day, Blessed Mario Borsaga from Italy. And with one more miracle, he will be known as Saint Mario Borsaga, and he's today's Might Be Saint of the Day. And for those people who are interested in the project They Might Be Saints, you can pick up my book, They Might Be Saints, which is available from EWTNRC.com, the religious catalog of EWTN. I think it's my best book. And in that book, I feature 22 Americans on the path to sainthood, and those are the venerables and blesseds before they become saints. And or you can check out the television series. You can go to theymightbesaints.com to watch any of the episodes, or you can tune on TV on Tuesday, May 5th, the episode They Might Be Saints, Blessed Sloanus Casey. He was known far and wide as the miracle-working Capuchin from Detroit, and his beatification was attended by 60,000 people at Ford Field in 2017. And I examine his simple yet remarkable life in this episode of They Might Be Saints, Blessed Sloanus Casey, on Tuesday, May 5th. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about Venerable Antonio Margil with his vice postulator, Father George Eliot. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People who tune into this show know that I love talking about saints and American saints at that, and future American saints more specifically. Yeah, I'm so excited about these Americans on the path to sainthood, and it was really fun to write the book, They Might Be Saints, which is available at EWTNRC.com. I think we featured about 22 Americans on the path to sainthood who had gotten to the point of venerable, and that's once you're a servant of God, your cause is open. With the recognition of your life of heroic virtue, no miracles considered, you can move forward to venerable. And that is where Antonio Margil is at this point. And then it's the search for miracles is on, of course. And then with one intercessory miracle, that person can move on to become blessed. And in this case, he would become Blessed Antonio Margil. But the miracle that leads to canonization has to happen after the announcement, the promulgation of the decree from Rome that person is now blessed, and so or will be blessed, I guess, in a formal canonization ceremony. So in the case of Father Antonio Margil, I believe they have a number of miracles from the past, and perhaps one of these miracles that they can look at will boost him ahead to blessed, and then beyond that point, they'll need a new miracle to move forward after that point. But I think it's there's any number of American future saints who qualify or are in this category that, I wouldn't say that they're all Americans in the sense that do they have a citizenship card? No. Or were they born in the United States? No. But there are plenty of immigrants, even Father Patrick Peyton, you'd say, coming over from Ireland. And he spent all his time, much of his time in California and all over the United States and all over the world. But he spent a significant amount of time in the United States. So he qualified to be in the book. And for a way, we say an American American saint, but there's any number of causes like that where we have immigrants coming from all over the world to this great country of ours, and they're on the path to sainthood. And sometimes their vice postulator or their canonization cause is from the place where they were born. But more typically, their canonization cause happens in the location where they died. And in the case of historic causes, sometimes these causes, like in the case of Father Antonio Margil, that may go silent for some years, or there's not a lot of progress on it. And the people who are promoting it and supporting it aren't necessarily there in the same way. And so at some point in history, somebody might say, somebody might become the new promoter of the cause and say, this is somebody who's important for our time today. And as such, they will pick up that cause and move him forward by finding new funding for the postulation and for the investigation of miracles with doctors, and for the team that comes together to do the research, especially in a historic cause. You can't do interviews with the person and their relatives and the people they knew, which is the typical way that they do things. But in the case of a historic cause, they have to go through all the documents. It's a big historical push to put together that positio, that academic position paper that draws all the aspects of the person's life together. And that is one of the things when they submit the positio, they want to identify all the virtues, the faith, hope, and charity, and otherwise, and also do sort of a biography of that saint. So when they submit it to the dicastery for the causes of saints in Rome, that dicastery, who may not know who this person is, will get to know them very well, and they'll not only know the basic details of their biography, but they'll also learn all their virtues and why they could be considered a saint. And then they go through the process of establishing whether that person is venerable based on that positio, that position paper. And so I think that in the case of Father Antonio Margil, it's a very exciting news that we have another person who lived here in the United States who's being considered for sainthood and joining that list of about 25 now. It's definitely under 30, people who have moved along the path from servant of God to venerable or blessed. So definitely excited to talk to Father George Eliot about this saint. We're so excited today to be joined by Father George Eliot, the vice postulator for the canonization cause of Venerable Antonio Margil. Welcome to the program, Father George.
Thanks so much, Michael. I'm honored to be on.
Well, thank you for joining us on today's show. And many Americans, I would say the majority of American Catholics, have not heard the name Antonio Margil. Who is the man?
Father Margil was a Franciscan priest who was born in Valencia, Spain in 1657. And he came over real young. He actually entered into the Franciscans at 17 years old. And he's actually known as the Apostle of the Americas. He's kind of one of these characters that was almost kind of so early in a lot of the missionary activity that a lot of people didn't hear his name. But I mean, he founded these colleges. He worked miracles. He spoke multiple languages. I mean, just did so many things. Just really great man, great missionary, and a lot of areas of the Americas, of both the United States and Mexico, and even down into Central America, has Catholicism because of the work that he did.
Wonderful. And I know you mentioned he spent time in Texas and also Louisiana. Tell us a little bit about his time in the United States. At what point in his life did that come up, and what was he doing during those moments?
Yes, so it was really kind of towards the end of his life, around 17. It was kind of in the 17 teens that he ended up really coming up into Texas personally, and it was 15, 16 that he founded a whole bunch of missions through East Texas and Louisiana, and as he was founding them, he obviously would set them up, but he would then kind of come back and forth between them. He was known actually to have walked thousands of miles, and he would walk hundreds of miles in a day. Well, really even shorter than that. People would say, like, how did you get here? And he would just kind of say, like, well, I walked. So really he had that gift of kind of transportation being moved. from one location to the next, just by the power of our Lord. I think the most famous story of him in that East Texas, Louisiana area is the Eyes of Margil. So in 1718, there was a major drought in the area. People were dying. The Spanish soldiers that were there at the mission were considering abandoning the mission, and all of the crops were failing. And so he went down into the creek bed of Lanana Creek in Nacogdoches, Texas, and he prayed through the night, asking our Lord for mercy for the people and for the mission. And that morning, he walked along the creek bed and he struck it in two different locations. And miraculous springs came forth from both of those locations that he struck it. And so he's referred to as the new Moses, or the Moses of Texas.
It's a great name.
The mission was saved. The people survived, and really the work of our Lord was able to be continued in that area because of that miracle. And I think the most striking thing is that those springs are actually still present today.
I was just going to ask, can people still go today to the place of this miracle?
Yes, absolutely. I must say that it's not as developed as we would like it to be. We actually are working on kind of developing that site more. There's some great work done by actually some professors at Stephen F. Austin University, which is a public university, but they really did some really good work identifying the springs because they had been kind of lost in the midst of really a kind of anti-Catholic push in the area. But they searched out all of the documents, found the two springs, and fixed them up a little bit. There's been some damage, but we're actually working with the state of Texas to hopefully really repair those areas and have a nice area where pilgrims could come and visit, pray, and learn more about the life of Antonio Margil.
Amazing. We're talking today with Father George Eliot, the vice postulator for the cause of Venerable Antonio Margil, a person on the path to sainthood who lived in Texas and Louisiana and might be a saint someday. And what's very interesting to me is that his cause has been open for a long time, from what I can gather. 1769 was the opening of the cause, and so you are the vice postulator of this cause, and you're looking for a miracle, I suppose. How does it work with this historic cause and trying to push forward Father Margil towards sainthood?
One clarification: I don't know that I think a vice postulator is an overstatement for my role. I'm the pastor in the area. I have been asked by the bishop to promote his cause, and we're doing everything we can to really continue to promote that cause, build devotion, and really connect the different people involved. His body is down in Mexico. The postulator is actually in Rome, and so we've got a whole bunch of different things going on. And I'm kind of becoming the person that's connecting everyone. But excitingly, we actually already have two miracles, at least purported miracles, through his intercession, and they're both connected to the water from the Eyes of Margil. And somewhat fun, they're both connected to eyes as well. One was that there's a lady who, in Nacogdoches, she's really kind of one of these matriarchs of the Hispanic Catholic community in the area, and her eyes were failing. She had a pretty severe glaucoma, and she was a lector in the church. And she prayed and she said, "Lord, I want to be able to continue to serve as a lector. I want to continue to serve in the church, but if my eyes are going blind, I can't do that." And so she prayed, asked, and Venerable Antonio's intercession washed in the water from the Eyes of Margil, these springs in Nacogdoches, and then was miraculously healed. She no longer has glaucoma. Her decline in eyesight has actually reversed, and she sees fine, and she continues to serve as a lector in the church.
Wonderful. Well,
there's another. What's that?
That could end up being the miracle that propels him towards blessed. That's truly amazing. And,
exactly. Yeah. So we're collecting medical information and having some more scans just to kind of prove that yes, everything is still healthy. But yes, we're really hoping that could be one of the miracles that moves them along in this process.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Father George Eliot, for joining us on today's program, talking to us about Venerable Antonio Margil and his cause for canonization, which we hope moves forward, and we can pray for that. For people who are interested in learning more and perhaps finding an intercessory prayer where they can seek the intercession of Father Margil for glaucoma or otherwise, what might you recommend they go to a website to find that?
Yes, there's a very simple site that has been put together, margil.us, margil.us, that people can go to learn a little bit more. We're continuing to develop that, or you can go to the Sacred Heart Catholic Church website, which is sacredheartnac.org, to get in contact with the parish, and we've got some other materials that we'd be happy to share.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Father George Eliot. We're so grateful to you for shining the light on this potential American saint, you might say, Father Antonio Margil, and we'll all be praying for his canonization moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
God bless.
God bless. And that was Father George Eliot talking to us about Venerable Antonio Margil. Many Americans have not heard about this, but this is an exciting cause of somebody who lived for some point anyway in the United States, in Texas and Louisiana. And people can go to find out more at that website, margil.us, which is margil.us, to find out more information about this up-and-coming future saint who lived in the United States. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to ewtn.com/radio, check out the audio archives, or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Dr. Alessandro de Franciscis, talking about his retirement as the Lourdes Doctor. And also Father George Eliot joined to talk about Venerable Antonio Margil. And I'd like to thank you today for joining me on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Talk to you next week.